The hardest part isn't the collapse itself. It is navigating what remains afterward. You've experienced what many call an ego death. Perhaps it arrived through spiritual revelation, emerged during profound crisis, surfaced in a relationship's ending, unfolded during a psychedelic journey, or culminated from years of inner turmoil finally breaking through. Regardless of how it manifested, you felt its impact. The identity you'd held onto dissolved completely. It vanished. Initially, there might have been peace, even liberation. But now, you're suspended in profound stillness. No ambitions, no momentum, no defined identity worth defending. Just this vast emptiness where your former self once resided. This is where most people lose their way. We imagine enlightenment as perpetual cosmic euphoria. Reality proves messier, more disorienting. It can leave you collapsed on your life's floor, questioning whether anything holds meaning anymore. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who revolutionized our understanding of human consciousness, grasped this phase more deeply than most. He termed it the persona's death, when society's mask falls away, revealing how much of our existence was choreographed by fear, conditioning, ego-driven needs, and validation-seeking. Yet he also recognized this breakdown wasn't an ending. It was a genesis, the birth of something infinitely more authentic than the persona ever could be. But how do you transition from that hollow post-ego death state into purposeful, meaningful engagement? How do you reconstruct without manufacturing another facade? That is what we're exploring here. This isn't about transforming into a productivity automaton. It is about something profoundly deeper, accessing soul-level drive, the kind untethered from external validation or identity constructs. Rooted instead in truth, Carl Jung provided us with powerful insights. Stay with me through this exploration because we're reframing how you conceptualize motivation, purpose, and restoration after ego death. By this video's conclusion, you'll possess a new framework for advancing, not backward toward your former self, but toward the version that was concealed beneath all along. Most people land here after ego death, suspended in the void. Not quite depression, not exactly apathy, more like nothing resonates anymore. The pursuits you once chased, success, recognition, becoming someone feel hollow now. Goals seem meaningless. Affirmations. Ring false vision boards collect dust. You're not lacking motivation, you're lacking a self to motivate. Jung identified this as the critical juncture where we either retreat into old identities, numb ourselves, reattach to superficial objectives, or begin what he called individuation. That is, the gradual, sometimes agonizing journey of integrating the unconscious, discovering the self with a capital S, and constructing a life aligned not with ego but with soul. He wrote that within each of us exists another whom we don't know, who speaks through dreams and reveals how differently he perceives us from how we perceive ourselves. This marks your new direction's beginning, not through force, but through listening. Let's be honest though, this phase feels bewilderingly chaotic. You're not lazy. You're recalibrating. You're becoming conscious of how much of your life was constructed on survival rather than sovereignty. So if you're occupying that space right now where nothing feels pressing and old ambitions don't ignite you, don't panic. You're not lost. You're transitioning. Jung didn't believe the unconscious would desert you. He believed it would transmit messages, symbols, dreams, synchronicities, subtle impulses, guiding you toward your next chapter. But you must remain receptive. The emerging self can't be manufactured, but it will surface. You've reached the void post-ego death, floating in that peculiar space where former motivations fail and new ones haven't materialized yet. Honestly, this part is strangely draining. You're not accomplishing much, yet you feel exhausted. You want to move, create, build something significant, but your body and mind won't synchronize. Everything feels sluggish, weighted, futile. Here is the paradox. What if what is keeping you stuck isn't the emotion itself, but your resistance to it? I know it sounds counterintuitive, but every time you feel exhausted and criticize yourself for it, you're not resting. You're struggling. You're expending mental energy attempting to exist in a different state than your current one. That resistance, that internal argument, is what is depleting you. Not the tiredness, but the battle against it. Jung understood this dynamic profoundly. He said, what you resist not only persists, but grows larger. This wasn't merely metaphorical. He was describing the human shadow, the aspects of ourselves we repress, judge, and evade. When we resist what is internal, we fragment ourselves. We generate internal conflict. We hemorrhage energy, pretending we're fine. But what happens when you stop? What happens when you allow yourself to be tired completely, just surrender to it? What happens when instead of shaming your motivational absence, you sit with it, breathe with it, and listen to it? You begin sensing what lies beneath. And when you cease resisting the supposedly negative state, when you permit it to exist without judgment, you create space for it to shift. That is when transformation begins. Let's ground this in reality. You're lying in bed, nothing appeals. Your inner critic activates. You're wasting time. You should rise and accomplish something. Why are you like this? But what if instead of spiraling into shame, you said, I'm feeling unmotivated right now, and that is acceptable. I'm going to feel it without trying to escape it. What you'll discover is your body relaxing, the tension loosens, your mind softens, and perhaps not always immediately, maybe an hour later, maybe 10 minutes later, something stirs. A small spark, a curious thought, a gentle urge to move or create or walk. That is not manufactured motivation. That is organic momentum, because the deeper truth is emotions aren't inherently good or bad. From an elevated consciousness perspective, they're simply energy, energy waiting to move, to be expressed, to complete its cycle. Sadness isn't weakness. It is the body processing grief, loss, or release needs. Anger isn't evil. It is often unspoken truth protecting your boundaries. And fear is your nervous system attempting to keep you safe, perhaps outdated, but still trying. Children understand this instinctively. Watch them. When they're sad, they cry loudly. Then they're finished. When they're angry, they scream it out. 5 minutes later, they're playing again like nothing occurred. That is because they don't harbor beliefs about their emotions. They don't judge them. They simply feel them until we teach them otherwise. We teach them, good boys, don't cry. Anger is bad. Calm down, be strong. Don't be lazy. And gradually they begin suppressing. That suppression creates a shadow, the unconscious aspect of our psyche. Jung dedicated his life to studying. It contains every emotion, impulse, truth, and desire we've ever judged or disowned. And your genuine power resides in that shadow. Your creativity, passion, boldness, authenticity, all of it is buried beneath layers of shoulds and shouldn'ts. So if you're feeling unmotivated, tired, moody, uninspired, that is actually good. That is your fuel. You don't need to fix it. You need to feel it. And when you do, it transforms. Here is something surprisingly powerful. Simply playing with the paradox can ignite creativity. Let yourself explore the idea. What if my laziness was my muse? What if you wrote a poem called Fueled by Laziness, or an essay titled The Productive Power of Doing Nothing? What if your sadness became the water that softens stone? What if your fear inspired a story called The Brave Coward? Just imagine how artistically rich that sounds. Your mind loves a twist. It loves contradiction. It loves when something doesn't quite fit, because that is where tension lives. And from that tension, new meaning can emerge. Once you flip the label, your imagination ignites. It stops trying to escape the emotion and starts dancing with it. This is creativity at its core, not the polished social media version, but the raw, authentic kind that flows straight from the soul. Jung would say this is your unconscious coming online, offering symbols, language, and metaphor to help you express what the rational mind cannot. So next time you feel off, don't fight it. Write, paint, or speak from it. Let the paradox be the catalyst. Your resistance isn't your enemy. It is your untapped artist, and your shadow is holding the paintbrush. By now, you've probably realized something most people never grasp. The path forward after ego death isn't about pushing harder, it is about listening deeper. And that brings us to one of Jung's most powerful yet most misunderstood concepts, the self. Not your job title, not your social media bio, not even your personality type. Jung's self, with a capital S, is the totality of who you are. It is your soul's blueprint. It includes your conscious mind and your shadow, your wounds and your potential. It is not just who you are today, it is who you were always meant to become. The self wants to guide you. It wants to grow, evolve, express, and create through you. It sends messages constantly. Random urges to write or move or contact someone. Feelings that don't make logical sense but somehow feel calm. But we miss it because we're trained to only trust logic, only trust action, only trust results. Meanwhile, motivation from the self doesn't come from pressure. It comes from resonance. Noticing what feels real. Even if it is quiet, from following the gentle pull, not the loud demand. Look, there's a reason this is so challenging. There's a reason most people avoid their shadow. It is not because they're weak. It is because really feeling, can feel like losing control, and losing control feels like losing your foundation. You know, you have to work tomorrow, run your business, show up for your children and partner, keep functioning, so naturally you tighten up, you suppress. You armor yourself with logic and routines and a manufactured smile because you're afraid that if you let go, even momentarily, your entire familiar life will collapse. That is not failure, that is survival, and it is completely valid. But here is the deeper truth. Feeling your sadness, your exhaustion, your anger doesn't destroy your life, it grounds you in it. Because beneath all that tension is your real self waiting to be heard. Let's make this concrete. You've been sitting in the void, letting yourself feel without resisting. And one afternoon, this strange urge emerges. You suddenly want to rearrange your room, or take a walk, or open a document and type out a few sentences that don't even make sense yet. You almost dismiss it, you think. That is silly, what is the point? But it feels light, expansive. That is the self speaking. Follow it. Jung believed this kind of symbolic, nonlinear intelligence is where the treasure lies. He called it the transcendent function, the bridge between conscious and unconscious. When you allow both voices to speak, something new emerges, a direction that isn't forced but revealed. But yes, it is difficult to trust that, especially in a culture that treats rest like weakness, intuition like fluff, and productivity as the ultimate measure of worth. You were raised in that system, so naturally you doubt yourself. Naturally you feel like doing nothing is dangerous, like you'll fall behind. Like if you don't figure it all out right now, you'll stay stuck forever. But the truth is, the soul doesn't operate on deadlines. It operates on alignment. And when you start honoring your energy, listening to your deeper impulses, making space for feeling instead of constantly fixing, something shifts slowly. Then suddenly you start wanting to move again. Not because you should, but because it feels meaningful. You start writing, not to be productive, but to express something real. You reconnect, not to perform, but to relate authentically. And this is when the magic begins. You become a vessel for the self, for life itself, for that inner artist, inventor, creator, healer, teacher, builder, whatever has been hiding under the rubble of who you thought you had to be. Ask yourself, what has my self been trying to communicate lately? And if you don't know the answer, good. That means you're listening. Now, you might be wondering, okay, but what do I actually do with all of this? Because life continues happening. Bills still exist. The world doesn't pause just because you've gone through a spiritual death and started awakening to your truth. And this is where we bring it full circle. Because here is the truth that most spiritual bypassing skips over. You still have an ego, and that is okay. Jung never said the ego was the enemy. In fact, he believed the goal wasn't to kill the ego. It was to integrate it, to bring it into alignment with the self. Your ego is your interface. It is how you operate in the world. It helps you make decisions, set boundaries, protect yourself when needed. It only becomes problematic when it starts pretending, when it disconnects from the deeper source. So the path isn't about choosing between soul and structure. It is about letting your structure serve your soul. And this is where motivation takes on a completely new quality. You're not moving just to achieve. You're not building out of fear of falling behind. You're creating because you have something to say, something to give, something that has been living inside you, waiting for space. So yes, start small. Let your routines be soulful. Let your work have rhythm. Let your creativity have cycles. Care for your body because you love it, not because it is a productivity machine. Let your calendar have grace. Let your mornings be soft, if that is what you need. Let your evenings be sacred. And when resistance shows up again, as it will, don't fight it. Ask gently, what are you trying to tell me? Because now you know how to hear the answer. You've met the part of you that doesn't need to hustle to matter. You've begun understanding how sadness, laziness, even fear are not obstacles. They're messengers. They carry the keys to your next poem, your next idea, your next direction. This is the gift of ego death.
We're T-minus 10.
It strips
9,
away everything
8,
false,
7,
so that what is true
6,
finally
5. We have to go from ready to start.
And when
2,
you let
1.
that truth shape your actions,
Booster
when you
ignition
let your shadow,
and liftoff
your
of Shuttle
stillness,
Endeavour with
your
NASA's final
paradoxes
space station
inform how
crew
you
compartment
move,
that
how
brings
you
a bay
show
window
up,
view
how
to
you
our
serve.
celestial backyard.
You become whole. You stop performing and start expressing. You stop pushing and start aligning. You stop chasing life and start living it fully, wildly, softly, in all its beautiful contradiction. That is not just motivation, that is embodiment, that is the self alive in the world. And if you've made it this far, you might already feel it. That quiet knowing, that shift. It is not loud, not flashy, not viral, but it is real. And that is enough